International Anti-Poverty Organization Oxfam warns the hunger crisis linked to the pandemic around the world could eventually claim more lives than the disease itself. We're now joined by Kalayaan Constantino, Regional Campaigns and Policy Manager of Oxfam Asia. Kalayaan, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Rain, and it's good to be here with you in the show.
Well, Oxfam's current projections say the number of people experiencing crisis-level hunger might reach 270 million this year as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, an increase of over 80% from the previous year. What does this say about the response of various governments around the world to the pandemic?
What we're seeing is that the estimate of the World Food Program, we will probably see an estimate of around 6,000 to 12,000 additional people dying of hunger related to COVID. Various governments around the world need to act more and need to do more, not just to really show and control the disease, but also to take actions to address hunger and prevent hunger or more hunger because of the pandemic, people dying out of it. I think the challenge really has been that the pandemic exacerbates and really makes issues worse. We've seen the mass unemployment are really affecting people and families who have been already grappling with or struggling to put food on the table for so long. Mass unemployment means that these are affecting workers, for example, in Bangladesh, where the garment industry is the biggest private sector employer, and with 1 million losing their jobs, a majority or two-thirds of them women. These are already poorly paid jobs in the first place, and so losing this means they don't have any income or source of income to put food on the table. In Asia, 60% are part of the informal economy. You're talking about our street vendors, your GP drivers, your daily wage workers who have no access to insurance, health benefits, or other social protection schemes. So the economic slowdown has really led to losing their source of income and basically making them unable to provide food for their families and themselves.
And you're saying that hunger will kill more people than the virus itself. Of the 71 million people expected to be pushed back into poverty, how many are in the Philippines? The data, particularly for the Philippines, is not there yet. But what we do know, the latest SWS survey done May of 2020 shows that the hunger has doubled across all localities, particularly the spike was seen in Metro Manila. So from the last survey in December, where it shows that people who reported hunger was at around 8.8%. The May result doubled back to 16.7%. That means around a total of about 3.9 families are experiencing hunger now. So I think what's crucial to put here is that we recognize that governments across the world and in the region, from India to Pakistan to the US and the UK, even in the Philippines, have put in place some measures to support people who have lost their jobs and who have felt the effects of the social and economic effects of the pandemic. But I think more needs to be done to really reach those who are most in need. And we are calling for governments and the international community to provide additional support, particularly for lower income countries who maybe do not have enough resources to first establish and really do more social protection schemes and at the same time really fund their health system so that they're able to control the pandemic. We're calling for the cancellation of debt. So that will release some funds for lower income countries to invest in that. And at the same time for governments and rich governments in particular to really fund the UN's call for their appeal to the response plan to address the impacts of the COVID pandemic, which is currently, we only need like 7.8 billion US dollars, and that so far is only 24% funded. And you know what we're saying is this shows our food system is, because the UN only needs around 7 billion, but the top 8 food and drink companies, the global companies in the world, for the past 6 months have already earned and shared and provided dividends to their shareholders a total of 18 billion US dollars.
Well, the Philippines is one of the longest lockdowns in the world, and we're still on the first wave of the pandemic. Is there a correlation between how long a lockdown has lasted and the number of people at risk of being plunged into hunger?
I mean, the lockdowns have, really impacted countries, globally. Really the slowing down of the economy has really meant that there's less economic activity. It has led to mass unemployment, as I said before, and particularly for informal workers. This meant that they don't have any, ability to basically earn an income, and because they don't have any other sources of benefits or insurance, that means that they are going hungry. And I think the fact, for example, that even farmers and smallholder producers, because of the disruption in the supply chain, meant that they were not able to sell their products. Has really meant that they're having difficulty feeding their families and themselves. In the Philippines, what we do know is that based on survey, not only anecdotal stories that we see, in ANC and all the other news that we read, that people are really suffering because of the lockdowns. What is needed, I think, is for really governments, not just in the Philippines, but also across the world, to find ways to really fund more social protection schemes, do cash transfers, find innovative ways to make sure that people will have food on the table and will be able to earn income in the middle of a lockdown.
Well, Oxfam's headquarters are calling out food and beverage industry titans like Coca-Cola, Unilever, saying they continue to make a profit amid the pandemic, and these are the businesses that need to help more now. Tell us about that.
I think what we're trying to illustrate is how broken our food system is. The ones who produce our food, our farmers, the small fisher folk, the small producers, barely earn enough to escape poverty, send their kids to school, and at the same time, just even to eat healthy food. They don't earn enough to do that. But you see, in the midst of a pandemic where millions of people are going hungry because of the knock-on effects of the crisis, that big companies are earning billions of dollars, and that the shareholders of these companies have already gotten the profits from this. It's time to really, I think the pandemic and this crisis is an opportunity for all of us and for governments across the world to really push for a better, a more sustainable, and more equitable food system. A food system where the priority is to, how can the ones who produce our food are able to sell their produce for a price that will enable them to live well, or not and escape poverty, so that those who are workers who are producing or processing our food in plants are able to earn a living wage, instead of a focus on a food system that's focused on establishing big companies where the profits go actually to the richest and not to the ones who produce our food.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about sustainable food. By how much has this pandemic set back the Sustainable Development Goals?
The UN report, has basically said that we might not be able to achieve SDG goal number 2, which is zero hunger.
it really highlights the fact that we need a focus on, I think governments really need to invest in rural development and really look at how, look at how small-scale agriculture, supporting small producers as a priority, investing in what they need, the resources they need, the infrastructure that they need, the information that they need, so that they're able to produce enough food, not just for their community and their nation, but also for themselves. I mean, we know for a fact that 70% of small-scale producers across Asia and even in Africa, they're the ones who feed us. So it only really needs a focus, additional investments to make sure that they're able to produce more in a sustainable way and get away from this food system where the focus is on big industrial kinds of agriculture, producing monocrops, for example, that is harming our environment, damaging our soil, and this will not be sustainable in the long run, especially because of the climate crisis that we're facing. A good future food system is one that's sustainable, small, and if we support our small-scale producers, that means addressing our food security, as well as ensuring that our world remains to be viable and sustainable for the future.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the future, the question of whether to bring the kids back to school now. While others can afford online learning, others cannot, and this may increase the divide in literacy. What is the position of Oxfam on that?
I mean, we think we need to really think about the fact that addressing this pandemic will require some changes in the way we work, in the way we operate, and in the way we probably study and educate our children. We can do both. I think we can definitely control. Government should really focus on, yes, doing all that we can to control the pandemic, but at the same time make sure that actions are taken first to definitely eliminate hunger or address hunger that will hunger that will be faced by people because of the impacts of the pandemic. In terms of learning, I think that also means looking at the inequalities around this and how can government support people who cannot afford a good internet, for example, or may not even afford laptops or even cell phones, to find ways to make sure that education remains accessible for them. And that requires the right investments and a right focus to make sure that those who are in need and those that are being missed out of the system, help and support will be provided.
Mm-hmm. And there's also still conflict to contend with in the South, Kalayaan. What is the experience on the ground, and what support do they need? This is also worsening hunger.
It is. I think, conflict in our report where we talked about 10 hot spots of severe hunger across the world, 8 of those 10 countries are countries mired in conflict, from Syria to Afghanistan. And it's no different in the Philippines, where particularly in the south, conflict has been an issue between government and armed groups, as well as clan wars and the like, for quite a long time. We know that conflict causes and at the same time is a consequence of food shortages. We've supported the call as Oxfam for a global ceasefire. I think we need to end hostilities, and Oxfam and a lot of our partners in Mindanao who are working in Mindanao and working with the communities in Mindanao have supported that. We need to end hostilities because the constant displacement are really making it very difficult for families to earn a living, to harvest their produce. So, for example, one of our partners was talking about the fact that there are families who are displaced, who've been leaving their homes 3 or 4 times already for the past month in the midst of a lockdown because of the conflict, gunfires happening in their communities. And they're trying to find ways to, go to their farm, for example, when it's quiet, just to be able to gather their produce and sell it, and then go and live in the evacuation centers at night because they're afraid to go back home because of the conflict. So this constant displacement is really causing hunger. And women are particularly, and children are particularly vulnerable. So we need to end hostilities. We need to make sure that we are able to provide and target, a sufficient income support for the families who are displaced, so that they have food on the table, but at the same time are able to, if hostilities are ended, then they're able to go home and really live a better life rather than evacuation.
All right, Oxfam calling for social protection schemes, fund health systems to control the pandemic, the cancellation of debt, as well as a global ceasefire. That's still a lot to do amid this pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Kalayaan Constantino of Oxfam. Thank you.
Thank you.